There's a really amazing story that came out a few days ago that I wanted to elaborate on with you guys. We talked a little bit about this on our last episode of Crystal Kyle and Friends. Andrew Yang and his team apparently turned down Dave Chappelle when Chappelle offered to do free comedy shows for them to try to get him elected mayor of New York City. Now, there's actually a lot to say about this. So, let me just say up front, first of all, obviously Eric Adams won the New York City mayor race. And then you had Wiley and Stringer and others who didn't. You have, or there's supposed to be a runoff election now, so there's an outside chance somebody else but Eric Adams can win, but it's very, very likely Eric Adams is going to win. The left was a mess for the entire race. And when I say the left, I'm referring to, I don't know if anybody you could say is really an ideal lefty in this situation, but Morales was a lefty whose campaign imploded because there were allegations that she was terrible to her staff, and her staff wanted to unionize in the last 7.5 minutes of the race. And then you have Maya Wiley, who I think was a Hillary supporter over a Bernie supporter, or, maybe a Cuomo supporter over a Cynthia Nixon supporter the last time that there was the governor's race there. Even Scott Stringer had issues, but Scott Stringer went down because of what we now know are basically bogus allegations of some sort of sexual misconduct. So the left was a mess the entire time. I never really spoke too much about the New York City mayor's race. I very rarely do city level politics. Also, I don't live in New York City. A lot of people think I live in New York City. I don't. I live outside of New York City, so it's not like I could vote in the race anyway, but people were under the misimpression, by the way, that Crystal and I endorsed Yang just because we had Yang on the podcast. We never endorsed him, and about half of that podcast is us asking very, very tough questions, whether it's on BDS and Israel or Medicare for All. So anyway, I just wanted to clear the air on that front because people sometimes get a misimpression and then they run with that misimpression to the point of absurdity. And I know that a lot of Yang's people clipped some of the stuff we said to Yang out of context and made it look like an endorsement, which is sort of fucked up. They shouldn't have done that. But anyway, I digress from that conversation. Back to the Chappelle thing. So what we know for sure is that Yang's team was like, this is not a good idea. And the reason they said it's not a good idea is because, Dave Chappelle is too controversial. Now, is Dave Chappelle controversial? Yes. All comedians, to one extent or another, are controversial. Honestly, guys, I'm at the point now of saying anybody who is even mildly interesting is considered controversial in today's day and age. Dave Chappelle, like him or hate him, is quite literally a living legend. He is one of the best comedians of all time, if not the best comedian of all time. I mean, his story is amazing, walking away from Comedy Central at the peak of his show, where he could have had millions and millions and millions of dollars, and he's like, I'm out, I'm going to Africa. And everybody's like, what the fuck is this? It turns out the guy was very, very sensitive to how fucked up Hollywood was, and he just was grossed out by everything around Hollywood. So there's this mystique, this aura that he has. Now, again, has he said controversial things? Has he said things that I massively disagree with? Of course he has. But he's a living legend, and he's one of the best comedians in the world, if not the best comedian in the world. And Andrew Yang's team turned down free shows from Dave Chappelle when Dave wanted to get Andrew Yang elected mayor of New York City. Now, by the way, I remember listening to Chappelle say something about why he originally wanted Yang for president, and then obviously he wanted him for New York City mayor. I think the reason why he wanted him for president had a lot to do with the UBI thing. I think Chappelle heard that and he's like, yes, that's what people need. They need fucking money. People are struggling in this country and you got to give them help. What's the fastest way to give them help? Give them money. So that was one of the reasons why Chappelle supported Yang. But the fact that they said no is every single thing that's wrong with professional political strategists. Guys, understand something. They're party insiders. They're complete and utter hacks, and they're conventional wisdom humpers. So if I ever run for anything, and I'm not, by the way, or if you guys ever run for anything, let me give you a little tip. One of the things you should do is brag about the fact that not only you take no corporate money, not only you take no billionaire money, You only raise through small dollar donations. But also you should say, I have zero political strategists. Now, policy advisors is something different. I would definitely say go get policy advisors. Policy advisors are wonderful. I would never say get strategists. Why? Because strategists are just people whose job it is to tell you what they think other people want to hear. Which is super gross in and of itself. Why are you like trying to feel where the winds of the moment are blowing and then you're like, I'm going to go that way? No, if you're running for office, you should tell people exactly what it is that you believe. Tell people what you believe, tell people what you'll fight for, and then they can either agree or disagree and vote for you or not vote for you. Now, maybe I'm old school, maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm simple, but that seems to me like the only honest way to go about doing this. And so he hires these strategists. By the way, a lot of Bloomberg's people. So he hires these professional strategists, and they run his fucking campaign into the ground. Now, I'm not taking away all agency from Andrew Yang, because he ultimately owns it at the end of the day. He owns his loss, because the buck always stops with him. He could have overrode them. He didn't do it. But let me tell you something. When there are too many people talking to you, whispering in your ear, giving you direction, saying go this way or go that way or do that or do this, you're going to go fucking crazy. And these people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They have no clue. So I don't know why people want to hire like population whisperers. What's the thing that you think other people want to hear, oh holy one? Fuck that. Tell people what you believe. Tell people what you think. Tell people what your policy preferences are. And then if you win, you win. If you don't, you don't. But at least at the end of the day, when you put your head down on the pillow at night, you'll go, hey, I bared my soul. I showed everybody what I was about. I didn't hide a single thing. I was upfront and honest. But listen, that's what happens. If you don't have a core and you can be swayed easily, you get absorbed into that political class and you end up just being this useless bellwether of conventional wisdom. And ultimately it ends like it ended with Andrew Yang, in a really, really, really pathetic way. When you look at how much he was up and then he collapsed, and listen, a lot of it is the fault of the whole thing about Israel and BDS, and man, he was terrible on that issue. Oh, he was so bad. And as Crystal pointed out, we both got the sense that the reason why he went all in on like the pro-Israel stuff, even when they're committing war crimes, is because he pissed off the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community when he said the thing about circumcision. How he's like, listen, I'm against circumcision, we didn't circumcise my son, whatever. That offended a lot of people in the ultra-Orthodox community, or so they thought. And so they were like, we got to make up for this. How do we make up for this? Let's just do rah-rah Israel all day long, and let's oppose BDS and basically compare it to Nazism, even though BDS is a peaceful attempt to end illegal occupation and bring about Palestinian human rights. I mean, it's the thing that worked in apartheid South Africa, and it's the most moral way you can fight back. If you can't fight back that way, how can you fight back? You can't do violence, that's called terrorism. You can't do nothing, you're just going to continue to get destroyed. So what are you supposed to do? Boycotts, divestment, and sanctions. That's the best way to do it. But no, they compared it to Nazism. He cheered on Israel as they were bombing women and children in Gaza. And the campaign just imploded. And listen, the media, for the most part, was against him from very early on. And sometimes that doesn't help. But listen, oftentimes you can spin that into a positive. Look at Trump in 2016. He spun the media hating him into a positive and ended up winning the election. And that's effectively my point when it comes to the Chappelle thing. Should you have accepted Dave Chappelle, doing stuff for your campaign, doing free shows? Fuck yeah, you should have. And guess what? When the media goes to write the smear pieces, you laugh about it and you call them out and you say how dumb it is. And you say, this guy's a living legend. This guy's one of the best comedians of all time. And I'm supposed to be ashamed at the fact that he wants to do free shows to promote my campaign? Are you dumb? But he didn't do that. He listened to the idiots. He listened to the conventional wisdom humpers. That would have been an issue where the media would have come after him, but they would have been so wrong and so absurd that you could have spun that into a positive for yourself. And listen, it's not like that would have changed the outcome of the campaign. He ended up losing by so much. But it speaks to the broader problem of this is what happens when you listen to the strategists from now until the end of time. They don't know what they're talking about. They're conventional wisdom humpers. They've never really proven themselves. Sometimes they just happen to glom onto a campaign that happens to win or barely win, and all of a sudden people look at them like they're Nostradamus or some shit. Don't buy into the hype, man. There's a whole bunch of charlatans and frauds and con men in this field of politics, and to have such a giant lead, have name recognition, be known for like a policy thing, and then to blow all of that goodwill and collapse historically, I mean, it really is beyond embarrassing. So he should have had a smaller campaign team. He should have had one strategist who he trusts, or no strategist at all, and then he definitely would have been better or done better. And he definitely should have accepted the help of Dave Chappelle and anybody else who wanted to help, who actually may have helped. You know, having one of the best comedians of all time do free shows for you to try to get the vote out, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. So I'm just amazed that we've heard people make the argument at this date, like, I don't take any corporate money, I don't take any PAC money, I don't take any lobbyist money, I only raise through small dollar donations. Politicians have caught on to that aspect of stuff, and by the way, most of the time, there are loopholes and they're still taking money in weird ways, just to be clear. Some are principled, but most have some way of taking money that's questionable. But anyway, people have caught on to that. It seems to me like no politicians at this late date have caught on to the thing I'm saying now, which is you should have no strategists and brag about the fact that you have no strategists and say, I don't need somebody to tell me what they think other people want to hear. I'm just going to tell you what I think. It's a wide open lane, and it's waiting to be, used. So maybe one of you guys will be the one who picks up on it.